All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Scale with Strategy. My name is Elizabeth McFadden, and I'm the CEO and Director of Brand Strategy here at Novella Brand House.
And I'm April Beach. I'm just going to introduce myself. And I'm April Beach. I am the CEO and founder of the Sweet Life Company. Back to you.
Back to me. And this week, so April and I tag team hosting this every week. And we're back to talking about branding today. And today we're specifically talking about visual brand and how that's really more than just your logo. So we're going to spend about 15 minutes talking about this, kind of identifying like what makes up a visual brand, and then how you can go about really thoughtfully and strategically creating your visual brand beyond just your logo. So the reason that we host Scale with Strategy every week is we're talking to those of you out there that are scaling your businesses, you're actively scaling your business, or maybe you're putting into plan, you're making plans now to do that. And obviously an integral part of scaling your business is creating a brand architecture that, resonates with your audience, that speaks to your value proposition. And so the visual brand is a really important piece of that. And in some ways, I feel like that's when people think about if they have a brand, they answer that question solely on, well, do I have a logo or not? Or, right? And sometimes they don't think about the messaging and the positioning, some of those other aspects. But a visual brand, again, like I said, is really more than just your logo. So what does that visual brand include? All right, so obviously includes a logo. And I want to dive into just a little bit more about the logo. So, years ago, honestly, before social media, so, we're talking probably 15 years ago or so, you could kind of get away with just having sort of one version of your logo. But as soon as social media started becoming, a really important part of probably your marketing strategy and your brand strategy, now your logo needed to kind of, have some different, I wouldn't say variations, it's still one logo, but you might have some different versions of that. So you might have, obviously you're going to have kind of what I would call like your regular logo, like your standard logo, but you're also going to have a square version or like a circle version. I think we've all seen when we go on to maybe, social platforms of companies or brands, and they're using like the wrong size logo for the little avatar, right? That's kind of one of those things that says to somebody, oh, maybe this isn't really a professional level company or brand or something like that. The other thing is the kind of the parts of your logo. So for instance, you can see here the Sweet Life logo and the Novella Brand House logo. Both of those have, both of those have like a type treatment, the name, but we each have like a little icon. We also call it in the business a mark, like it's that little design piece. Not every logo has or needs one of those. A lot of them do. Yeah, April's got hers right there. But you can see, you want to be able to like take those apart, because sometimes you're just going to want to use your little icon or your little mark. Similar to what April was just showing on the coffee cup. She uses that little wave, the three waves on a number of things, sometimes just by themselves. And then likewise with Novella, we'll just use our little house icon by itself too. So you want to be able to break those apart. Okay. The next piece of your visual brand is your style guide. And you're also going to hear people talk about like a brand guide. That's really kind of like next step. And I'm not going to get into that today, but you absolutely have to have a style guide. And so you're probably like, well, what does that include? Okay, so in addition to your logo, you need a style guide, which basically says, here are our fonts or our typefaces, and here are our colors. And that's kind of what you need at the bare minimum. So you'll say, here's our primary type or typeface or our font, secondary. You might even go into saying, okay, here's how we use, what type of font we use for a headline or for body copy, online, like a web only font versus like the fonts or typefaces that are, in your logo that you might use otherwise. And then your colors. You don't want to be just adding in color willy-nilly, right? You want to have like a set of colors, again, probably primary colors and secondary colors. And you always want to stick to those. So that just helps, helps you and your team or any kind of vendors you work with, always make sure that you're using the same color set, the right typefaces, and that you're consistent with those. And then a little thing that you can also add to that is photo style, or like certain photos that you use. And we'll talk a little bit more about, photos in just a minute. But that style guide is again something that every visual brand needs, right? So in addition to your logo, you're outlining what the different aspects, the visual aspects of your brand are. Okay, so just a second ago I mentioned photos. Here is the piece that I feel like a lot of brands or companies don't have, they don't really think about. And especially, again, we're talking about companies, we're talking to you if you are scaling your company or planning to scale. This is really, you'll find that you have to sort of make sure your brand is next level, or that we always say like your brand is, leveled up or up leveled. Okay, this next thing I'm going to talk about is like that really important piece. So you want to create a photo library for your brand. And like at the minimum, that would be maybe a set of stock images that you use, and you use them all the time. And like where you would use these would be on your website or in your pitch deck, or in brochures, or on your social media, in your like ad campaigns, like whether it's print ad campaigns or a lot of people are obviously doing digital ad campaigns, and you need photos. And so you want to have like a collective of photos that you feel like are on brand for you, that represent, your product, your service, and what your company does. So at the very least, you want stock images, but that's hard because what happens? You start seeing the stock images that you use pop up on other people's social. I mean, April, it's like, right? But that's a lot of times where you have to start. But ideally, what you want to do is you want to create a branded photo library. And what this means is you're going to hire a photographer to take your own photos. So like at the very least, that would include headshots of, you, your team, and then team photos, right? Like at the very minimum, that's what that branded photo library should be. And April, I know you've done a number of these, and I feel like you always have some kind of good tips, in terms of like making sure your brand colors are represented in those photos and that kind of thing. So maybe just talk a little bit about when you have done headshots or team photos. What are some kind of things that you've thought about when you're putting together your own photo library, like that you've hired a photographer, right, and you're creating those?
Right. Yeah, I love doing these. And the first thing I would say is if you can't do these yet, and you do have to use stock, just purchase stock. Don't do like the free stock, because then that'll reduce the likelihood that somebody else is using that. For us, we love these branded photo sessions, and we only actually have to do them like once every 2 years. But when we do them, we go all out. So I pay attention to what I'm wearing and then my brand colors and what I'm wearing. I pay attention to the location that we are and making sure that it's telling the story of our brand. And so we really actually put a lot of thought into that process. And the biggest thing for us, because we help companies scale, but we're also a very lifestyle focused brand. You can see like water behind me. There's waves in my logo, just making sure that what, like Elizabeth would say, is on brand, that even somewhere in everything that we're doing, we're still trying to tell the same story. And so if somebody sees water or the ocean or turquoise, they're like, oh yes, of course, that's the Sweet Life company. And when you do that enough, and you do it enough times for us, and people become very familiar with our brand, and it's very recognizable. I will say that, and for those people that are watching, Novella Brand House did all of our branding and logo strategy in that style guide that Elizabeth was talking about. And I wanted to interject before, I'm just going to say it really quick now, is so important for my team because I can give that to them. And so, yes, I know we're talking about the photo session too, but even the style guide you can give to your team, and you can be like, here you go, here's our colors, find something in this palette to wear for our branded photo shoot. And it's really incredibly helpful.
That's a great point. How you're taking kind of the style guide, and again, you might already have some sort of photo images that you use for style to direct somebody if they're looking for stock photos, or certain stock photos that you, again, like you said, you've purchased, so you've added them to your style guide to say, okay, here's sort of the group of photos you can use. But that's also a great way to kind of direct somebody, whether it's a photographer or even just to give people an idea of like, okay, what do we wear? Like, how dressed up are we? What does that look like? And so kind of going. So again, at the just where do you start, or how do you start to build your own branded photo library? Are going to be with headshots and team photos. Okay, so then taking it kind of a step further, those team photos, and granted, you could have, I think you should have a mix of some sort of posed, like nice group shots, or even like smaller group shots, and then just some more candid ones. Sometimes those can be really fun to use, like if you're like if you're doing some kind of like branded, just like, evergreen posts on social media, and it's like something about your team, some of those kind of fun, just interesting sort of candid shots can be great. And those are ones that you can use, you can use those over and over because they're interesting. People don't get tired of looking at those. So the next step after your team photos is product shots. So especially if you are obviously selling product online, or maybe you need some really great product shots for, brochures or collateral, that type of thing. Again, that's, I would imagine that most people sort of like wing it when they first get started. But as soon as you have the budget to take professional level product shots, that's a really great way to, again, up level your brand and to add those into your branded photo library, because you'll use those over and over. And especially kind of when I mentioned earlier about like the evergreen social media posts, those are the kind of product shots are great to add in there. Portfolio. So if you're an organization that, you don't have necessarily product photos, like you don't have products, but maybe you're a service. So you have case studies, or you talk about, or you like include testimonials, or there's more things like that. Having, creating those photos that are, again, professional level, either maybe of the work or of something that you're showing, like a deliverable. Again, just professional level portfolio, so you can put those into a nice case study, and again, use in a number of areas. Environmental. So what I mean by this is, you have like your team photos and stuff, but your team photos could be like in your place of work, your office, your shop, whatever, but it could also be like offsite someplace. Here at Novella, we do a lot of team photos like in our office, in our studio space. But then we also are in a really cool area in Kansas City called the Crossroads. It's like this kind of industrial, retail cool area. And so we do a lot of photos outside as well. But environmental is, just showing like where you work, or where your customers interact with you. So that could be your office space. It could be your retail location, your shop. Maybe it's a warehouse. Maybe you're more industrial. Like the factory floor, like where things are made. We did a really cool shoot a few years ago for a company that made furniture and fixtures, and they're like where their makers were, where their factory was, like that was really cool. And people want to see that like behind the scenes. And again, that's stuff that you can use over and over again, like as part of your branded, library, photo library. A restaurant, back of house as well as the front of the house. Again, so really, really interesting. And then, photos of your customers or your clients. And again, these can kind of be in the environmental shot. It could be maybe if you like feature testimonials, maybe there's a couple of clients that you want to have like a nice photo of that you always want to feature with that case study or client or testimony or something like that. Now, a question that we get a lot is, like employees come and go, and, how do I do a group shot? Because maybe next week it's going to be out of date. You can do those a couple different ways, but I also say too, it's it's fine. You know, if people come and go, it's just representing. It's not necessarily representing each of those individual faces. It's just representing kind of what your workplace looks like and just people and like the behind the scenes and that kind of thing. So, but again, where you're going to use this branded, this photo library is social media, website, ads, digital ads, especially. Digital ads tend to, like the creative in them, the graphics tend to wear out faster than print media does. And so you want to be able to have a photo library that you can kind of rotate in and out of. And again, stock images are not ideal at all for digital advertising because somebody else is going to use that. And it could be somebody else that you don't necessarily want your brand associated with, but that stock photo that you use is showing up in theirs.
And
I can't hear you.
Here, can you hear me now?
Yes.
And the other thing really quick, you guys, is that a lot of stock photos actually have a license where you can't use them, especially if they're associated with like certain products. And so we really want you to have your own photo session with your own stock images as quickly as possible, especially if you're a scaling business.
Yeah. And again, you'll find a lot of times you just kind of have to start with stock images, and that's fine. But as soon as you can make that investment into creating your own photo library, and the really cool thing is you can do it in parts, start with kind of some of these areas that I talked about and just build on that. And obviously not all these areas are going to be applicable to you. So you don't even have to worry about all of those. But building that library, you'll just find that it just gives you so much more freedom to be able to utilize all different kinds of marketing tactics. So there's a couple of ways that you can go about creating this photo library. I feel like a lot of companies don't do it, but they kind of don't know how to go about that. So I want to end this with just giving you a few kind of ways to do that. Obviously, you can hire a local photographer, and maybe it's somebody that maybe it was somebody that did your headshots. Go back to them because they have an understanding of your brand, and talk to them about some of these other types of photos that you want to add to your branded library, your group of images, your collection of photos. The other thing I want to tell you is if you're like, either if you're in Kansas City or you've been following us for a long time and you're a fan, last month we added a new service offering called Novella Studio. And so we now have a photographer in-house. She has over 20 years of experience and she leads that group for us. But we can create your branded collection of photos. And so I know for a lot of scaling companies, you probably have the logo, right? And you've got the style guide. But what you don't have is that, that basically photo library. And that's probably holding you back in some areas. And so we can help you do that. And it's super seamless. And again, if you're not in Kansas City or not in a place where Novella Studio is a good fit for you, check out some local photographers and start that conversation with them about how you can build your visual brand library.
That's really exciting. I love that the Novella Studio is so awesome. I'm so excited that you guys launched that. And I know there's a lot of businesses that aren't in your area that wish they were in your area because it's so cool. As far as that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's really like that. And here's the issue. We kept finding when we would work with clients that when they didn't have a photo library, they were really struggling where it came up with like when they were doing digital ad campaigns, because you've got to have those ads wear out. And so you need new photos. And then just maybe if they're trying to put together a brochure, we're constantly waiting for photos. And so now we can make that really seamless. And if you want to do some of those things, but you don't have the photos, now we can kind of do it. We can do it all as one project. So it's a huge, it's a really nice add-on for our current clients, but we can also do it for any others. And that's it. So if you want more information about Novella Studio, check out novellabrandhouse.com/Novella Studio and let us know if we can help.
Yeah, this was a fun day. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, people always like to talk about the pretties. which is the visual,
Right.
visual brand.
Right. And I mean, it's just a super great conversation because new businesses, yes, but scaling businesses, I feel like new businesses do what they need to do in the beginning. And sometimes they don't understand the complete brand strategy. And then for our scaling companies, then it's time to revisit this and see how well we actually did in those first few years. And there's just this next level of brand representation that we want you guys to have as we're scaling your business, and it's really kind of growing up the brand, if you will. Thanks, Angie. It's really helpful. She's put that in there. Okay, yeah, our pleasure, Angie. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. This is awesome.
You are welcome. All right, so next week it is April's topic. And do you know off the top of your head what we're talking about?
No, actually, I was just going back through and planning them for the whole rest of the year yesterday. So I actually am changing some things around a little bit.
Awesome.
But next week, whatever we talk about next week, it's going to be about scaling your offers and going from one to one to many, and really what that looks like for your company. So,
which is huge for scaling businesses. That's really what you have to master. So, okay, awesome. Excited to talk about that next week. Okay,
right, bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
See you soon.